just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out.
This is Friday Java on the 21st of September 2018, beaming from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. We're still improving the Boston Red Network. We'll have more improvements coming out this weekend as we roll along. As we conclude our part here, you'll hear from Beto O'Rourke. He is holding a town meeting, or he did hold a town meeting at the Texas Prairie View A&M College. I can get it out. Anyway, nonetheless, very interesting. It's about 8 minutes long, something like that. Prairie View A&M is a historic African-American college/university. It was a setting for the book, the debate. That was Denzel Washington there, and the great debate where they took on Texas Prairie View A&M, I should say, took on Harvard in a classic debate. Professor Tolson was the person played by Denzel Washington. A little bit of history here. We'll also hear from our friends at the University of Virginia, Charlottesville, the Crystal Ball, Dr. Larry Sabato, and as we normally do, we remember Heather Heyer here. We've been working on a number of special programming. One will be titled, look at the notes here, Clarence Thomas 2.0. On the current Kavanaugh hearing as compared with the Clarence Thomas hearing, and this is a good time to segue in the latest in the soap opera known as a Kavanaugh hearing. The headline in the Washington Post, and this is the headline in newspapers all over the U.S. and the world. Kavanaugh accuser, as they call, won't testify on Monday, but is open to do so next week. Attorneys for Christine Blasey Ford. Dr. Ford, the woman who has said that she was molested by a Kavanaugh of assaulting her when they were teenagers, said that the hearing, appearing at a hearing on Monday to detail her claims was not possible, but that she could testify later in the week. Her attorney, Deborah Katz, relayed a response to top staffers on the Senate Judiciary Committee on Thursday, requesting to set up a call with them to discuss the conditions under which Dr. Ford would be prepared to testify next Thursday. As you're aware, she has been receiving death threats, which have been reported to the FBI, and she and her family have been forced out of their home. Katz wrote to the committee she wishes to testify, provided we can agree upon terms that are fair and will ensure his safety. A hearing on Monday is not possible, and the committee insisting that it occur then is arbitrary in any event. The chair of that committee, Old Man Grassley of Iowa, said, though through a spokesman Thursday, that he would be consulting with colleagues on how to proceed. Kavanaugh wrote to Grassley in a letter released by the White House that he looks forward to testifying. I doubt that very seriously. I continue to want a hearing as soon as possible so that I can clear my name, Kavanaugh said in the letter. This will not happen. Amidst the maneuvering, the nomination was routed further late by insinuations, a tweet from a prominent friend of Kavanaugh's and supporters who publicly identified another classmate of Kavanaugh's as a possible Ford attacker. Ed Whelan, a former clerk to the late right-winger Anton Scalia, and president of Ethics and Public Policy Center, pointed to a floor plan, outlined photographs and other information to suggest the location of the house party in suburban Maryland that Ford describes, as he also named and posted a photograph of a classmate he suggested could be responsible. Ford dismissed Whelan's theory in a statement late Thursday. I knew both of them and socialized with the other classmate, Ford said, adding that she had once visited him in the hospital. There's zero chance that I would confuse them. Now, this is a very interesting situation, particularly for people that have worked on sexual assault cases like myself. There are instances where the wrong person is identified, usually through police lineups, overzealous prosecutors, etc., but not in this type of case. This is effectively what we call the frat boy beer keg case, although it was not at a frat house. And this has happened a number of times. We've had those kinds of situations, drunken frat types, but this time it was in a high school. It was a suburban home that had a swimming pool, it appears, and, of course, the parents probably were not at home. Or it was a large house, whatever the situation was. And this is the outcome. These types of outcomes, normally the person responsible is identified properly. Now, what the attorney Ed Whelan has done here is single out another individual as a possible person that committed the attack. And, of course, then he walked the statement back. But the right-wing machine immediately started to retweet this. And this just shows basically a system of desperation. Because Whelan had been this is Ed Whelan, very closely associated with efforts to get Kavanaugh confirmed. And now Kavanaugh is a man of much speculation. I saw some we only describe as gossip about some of the law clerks that Kavanaugh has had around. We don't know, but normally what happens in these situations, and so far not here, but if you recall the case of Justice Roy Moore, where several women came forward, and then another woman came forward and sort of nailed the case up for Roy Moore. But this was a different situation. than, say, Roy Moore's situation. Roy Moore was walking around the shopping center when he was very young age and admitted he was in the shopping center and he was dating a younger woman. He was in his early 30s. Some of these women were teenagers. But this situation is you have a person going to the Supreme Court for a lifetime position, that the whole issue is based on integrity. And now this Whalen character is something ethics and public policy. As Senator, there is no ethics or public policy in this organization he's with. This is a doctrinaire, a right-winger, and evidently this character here has associated with many right-wing types. Now, by identifying him is not a way to go. He had told people around him that he had spent several days putting together his theory, his scheme, and thought it was more convincing than her story. According to friends who talked, this is Ed Whalen. Whalen did not respond to comments, but to comment there, Whalen, of course, had been involved in advising Kavanaugh on his confirmation efforts, a close friend of both Kavanaugh and Leonard Leon, the head of the Federalist Society, who's been helping to spearhead the nomination. That tells you all right there. I ran into those characters when we were at Columbia. But anyway, Whalen also worked, Whalen and Kavanaugh, in the Bush administration. Kavanaugh and his cronies, this is according to the Post, had privately discussed the defense of it, would not question whether an incident involving Ford happened, but instead would rather raise doubt that the attacker was a Kavanaugh. Now, see, what's happened here is these characters have transitioned to that an attack happened. Their prior position was there was no attack. So, in other words, this is desperation and trying to pin it on somebody else and put the guy's picture out there. Now, evidently Whalen's caused a lot of problems. This guy, no doubt, will file a defamation suit. If he doesn't file one, he's a fool. That was named because he has been defamed. And so Whalen has got himself into a lot of trouble. The Republican Party would be well advised to put on hold this Kavanaugh confirmation hearing, and not to steal the thunder from Clarence Thomas 2.0, is that this particular hearing and the nature of social media has placed them in a very, very tenuous situation. That this is sort of like a Roy Moore that's ongoing. It would not stop with just a confirmation of Kavanaugh. If more evidence comes out and more women step forward, even if he's confirmed, there would be pressure on Kavanaugh to resign or be impeached, whichever one comes first. And then all the nasty business and, as they say, skeletons in the closet would immediately fall out. Now, the situation with Clarence Thomas, first of all, during his hearing in Anita Hill and Thomas were both African American Republicans, which a lot of people have forgotten about that, but that does put a totally different kind of situation there. She was out of a religious place called Oral Roberts University, which maybe she was teaching there, I'm not sure, but where she got her, I believe she got her legal degree there. And she had worked for Thomas at EEOC, the Equal Opportunity Commission, which was a sham because Thomas was a disgrace to EEOC. But when the hearing started at that particular time was a different situation. Joe Biden, Uncle Joe himself, was chair of the Judiciary Committee. And they basically worked out their protocols at the Senate gym. And there were very few women. Nancy Castlebaum and perhaps one other woman were in the Senate. I think there were just two in 1991. Now, this was a situation where there was a very close vote with Thomas. He did get it confirmed, but there was no social media at that time. It was a spectacle there. And the way that they set it up was such that it was a live hearing, and it was at the early stages of so-called cable. But the internet had not come. We had at that time user groups, bulletin boards, that sort of thing, to talk to people about various political commentary, but not the minute-to-minute situation today. And this is what has changed this and what's amplified it. Whalen takes to Twitter and exposes another person that could have been the suspect. Well, it was a drunken beer keg operation, no doubt about that, or whatever they were drinking. And there were a bunch of drunks there. But this situation is not like Thomas's situation. Thomas's situation was that he was just in general a pervert. They would call him in 1991. That he liked to watch porno movies and then graphically describe those to people around him. There were witnesses that came forward, talked about this. They were given cursory treatment. Some were believable, some were not. But this whole affair set up a backlash amongst women, and it caused the GOP electoral problems. They lost some seats because of that. But then again, Anita Hill double-crossed us on the OJ case. So in other words, we'll talk more about this on Clarence Thomas 2.0, 2.0, what do you want to call it, and go more into the hearing and what actually happened there. The state of the country, though, was a little different in 1991. We did not have the Me Too movement, which the Me Too movement, and more important than the Me Too movement, was a women's march, where hundreds of thousands of women came to D.C. and basically took the hotel rooms and everything, and Trump's little inaugural was just as they say, a subtitle, literally. That was the impetus to this whole situation, that women went back under Tamika, what was her last name? It used to be at the National Action, Maury? Anyway, at the National Action Network. She was there for a very long time under Dr. Sharpton. But she was one of the principal organizers of the Women's March. And it was a very successful, too, not only the march, but the whole idea that, in fact, we have LaDonna here explaining it as we come in every Friday night on a Friday Jobber, explaining what actually transpired from the Women's March and their ability to go back home and follow the maximum of Thomas P. Tip O'Neill, a long-serving Congress type from Boston. He represented South Boston in the House of Representatives, and he was also the Speaker of the House. But all politics are local. Well, yes, you have local politics, and women have been winning, and more women than ever are running for office, ran in primaries, etc., and are now still running for office. And this will affect the vote. We'll look at key states, like Florida, for instance, where, quote-unquote, the monkey is swinging through the trees in South Florida. That was a reference from DeSantis on Andrew Gillum. But DeSantis is behind, and he's been behind the last several months. We'll be looking to see to our model, the Ouija board model, and our slide rule model, 10 points, 8 to 10 points, I'd say. If Gillum can get up by that, he will manifestly affect the race between Bill Nelson and the Governor Scott, who is running for the Senate there, because that has been a neck-and-neck contest. And normally in these neck-and-neck contests, turnout is very, very important. And this hearing, no doubt, will impact that particular scenario and also take some of the thunder out of the people from Charlottesville. But independents have been going to Mr. Gillum there in Florida. So we'll look at those, and this is a good time to move on to the University of Virginia and Larry Sabato's shop. Incidentally, we'll have more, obviously, of this material on the week that was as we continue along here. There were two, let's see, do we have both of those up here? Larry Sabato appeared in, he had a special out on, no, this is not what we want to do. This is the 19th of September from the Center for Politics here. Tight Races Across the Sun Belt is the title of it, and I'm just wondering if this is a special one. We'll do it first. This is on the 19th, and then he issued a separate one, but we go to the Sun Belt here, a new series of, this is Reuters and ISOS and University of Virginia poll found close races. They have allied themselves with Reuters this time around. If you recall, before they were allied with all people of the Rasmussen people. They at least they presented the Rasmussen people presented this commentary on their site. The poll was conducted online in English, Espanol, from the 5th to the 17th, roughly 2,000 respondents per state. They're down to about 1,000 likely voters. Have found the following results. In Arizona, Kristen Sinema, 47 to 44 for Martha McSally. The governor's race, Ducey and Garcia. Ducey 51, Garcia 39. In California, Feinstein at 44%, Kevin DeLeon at 24%. It's basically how it's been going. Gavin Newsom and John Cox. Gavin Newsom at 52 to 40. We look to see this number as far as California is concerned and what's happening in Washington to be much more in favor of Gavin Newsom, the former mayor of San Francisco. Now the Florida's race here, Andrew Gillum at 50%. He's moving up, and Ron DeSantis at 44%. That's a 6-point lead. And these are of likely voters. They move from likely to registered voters. Now, on to Nevada. Dean Heller there and Jackie Rosen. Heller has 46% and Rosen 43%, 3-point advantage there. In Nevada, the governor's race there, Laxalt and Silax. Laxalt has 43% and Cesilac, I suppose how you pronounce it, at 40%. And in the Texas Senate race, who you'll hear from later here, Beto O'Rourke at 47% and Cruz at 45%. They actually had him ahead. Some polls have shown Cruz up by as much as 9%. And in the governor's race, it's Wheelchair Abbott at 50% and Lupe Vasquez at 41%. On to Arizona, the approval ratings are there. DJ Trump at 45% and 53% disapproval. In California, it's low, and it'll be going lower at 36% approval rating, 63% disapproval. In Florida, DJ Trump's on the water, but not as bad, 47% to 53%. In Nevada, it's tied up 44-44. And in Texas, of all places, 47% approval rating, 53% disapproval rating. And now, note that they made here, the same one, the findings of the Texas Senate race is a bit more bullish for Beto O'Rourke than other polls. And they go on to say, led by, this is a Quinnipiac poll, led by 9 points. We already talked about that one. And on the plus side, the Republicans are finding Nevada for Heller, is a little bit better for him than in recent polls. Jackie Rosen had led in 2 other surveys, but Hillary is up by a small amount, 3 points. And Laxall is up over the Clark County Commissioner Steve Sisolak. They're both toss-up races as far as the crystal ball is concerned. That is one of Dr. Sabato's. Let me find the next Dr. Sabato here. That somehow has gotten... Here we go, I think. Wait a minute. We're going to take a station break here to find Dr. Sabato's other newsletter. Hold on a second here. In the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth here, or perhaps we'll say center here, baseball games, it's in the so-and-so booth, but here it's at the Jerry Pippin broadcast center. Anyway, nonetheless, we have returned. Now, this particular is the title of the 20th, the next day, from Larry Sabato and Company. Rating changes, House and governors. And this is from Kyle Klondike. He's the managing editor there. Key points, a slew of new House polling, mostly from the Times and Seneca College. Contains bright spots for both parties. It also suggests a Democratic edge in races for the House. And we'll go into some of those. An open seat out in Arizona. That would be Arizona 9 from likely Democrat to safe Democrat there. In Colorado 6. That's Mike Kaufman from a toss-up to leans Democrat. An open seat in Florida 15th from likely Republican to leans Republican. Minnesota District 3, Paulson from toss-up to lean Democrat. George Holder, it's North Carolina 2, leans Republican, likely Republican, leans Republican. And in New Mexico, Pierce there from leans Republican, now to a toss-up, and Chris Collin, that is in upstate New York, 27 from likely Republicans to lean Republican. Now, these are some gubernatorial seats. This is Hickenlooper in Colorado from a toss-up to leans Democrat. And open seat, this is in Michigan. This would have been Gateway Snyder from a toss-up to likely Democrat, has changed some there. By now, those who watch the House of Representatives are aware of it. The New York Times massive House polling project in conjunction with Seneca University. They're in the field daily and release dozens of House polls from now through November, and they are providing House analysts and general public with a treasure trove of nonpartisan data about the most competitive House races, many of which might not have received a single nonpartisan survey if they were not for this project. The House analysts is grateful for the data they are being provided, and we'll be looking at this massive data from the Times and Seneca University, some of their polls there that they are rolling out. And we'll go ahead and append this to the show. So let's move on here. For Republicans, the completed poll shows that Carol Miller with a 48-40 lead that's in West Virginia over state senator there, an ancestral Democratic open seat that has been one of the most Republican districts in the country at the presidential level. The former Paul Ryan, Aid, Brian, this is Stelp is up 40 to 44. And over, let's see, we have Randy Bruce, that's in Washington 1, that's, or Wisconsin 1, I'm sorry about that. That's the seat Ryan is leaving behind as he heads into retirement. Well, both of these seats are right at center at the presidential level, overwhelmingly in the case of West Virginia 3, they are vulnerable as open seats. So this is some of the things here. The GOP seems to be holding okay in both. We called Virginia 3 a toss-up, and still in Wisconsin leans Republican. The other result is from Texas 23. This is Will Hurd was up 51 to 43, which just seems to confirm the thoughts for many observers that he's well positioned despite occupying the swing district. The GOP also got good news from Texas 23 on Tuesday night. Well, this is Pete Flores. This is featured in the Washington Post, won a traditional Democratic state Senate seat in a special election over the ex-representative Pete Galileo, who held Texas 23 from 2013 to 2015. On balance, special election results since the 2016 election have pointed to a positive environment for Democrats. There were a lot of miscues in that Texas race down there. And let's see, state assembly person. This is in California. Yoon Kim is 51 to 41 based on historical midterm turnout models over lottery winners. Oh, this is Gil Seninos. Anyway, this is some of what is going on here. Now to the, let's see, Michael Coffey, with a C, Colorado 6, and Paulson in Minnesota 3 are clearly leading to their Democratic challenges. Both Democrats were up about 10 points. Both moved from toss-up to lean Democrats. And I mean that Barbara Comstock is the underdog, is in the just another high-end suburban district. Barbara Comstock is that's in Virginia, is in the underdog column, warning to Democrats, even in bad environment, one or more of these incumbents could still win. There's no doubt about that. There's several more vulnerable Republican incumbents in 2006 did. Well, there's no doubt about that. I believe Comstock is currently leading in her race. That's the Republican National Committee. In the event, though, there are less than 50-50 odds at this point. Barbara Comstock is a lightning rod for the right for a very long time. Now they moved two races in New Mexico from lean Republican to toss-ups. Another open GOP seat that appears to be a decent Democratic target as Florida 15. Attorney Kristen Carlson, the Democratic nominee, recently released an internal poll showing her effectively tied with Ross Spino in another district carried by DJ Trump. I'm going to be watching all these DJ Trump districts and see what is happening there. We won't repeat some of the early things. They are moving to Michigan. Michigan's been a very interesting state for a very, very long time, and Gateway Snyder was able to transcend a weak Democratic Party in Michigan. That's been one of the big problems Michigan's had, holes in the Democratic Party in Michigan. Barack Obama had to reorganize it. The UAW has been stymied there because it's now a right-to-work state. So assuming if they can get a Democrat, at least a Democrat, in the governor's chair in Lansing, they'll be able then, depending on the composition of the legislature. I'm going to look at that. Incidentally, we at the Ouija board here are looking at for all 435 House races, and we'll get our take out here in about 2 weeks. We'll wait maybe 3 weeks, but we started to work at least on it at this time. Now, let me move on down here. This is on the 20th, keep on keeping in on the incumbent renomination rate. As a whole, incumbents won renomination in U.S. House, Senate, and gubernatorial nomination contests in this 2016. All 100 senators, 99 representatives, and 95 governors who sought renomination in Democratic and Republican primaries won a renomination in the cycle. At least they got renomination. Just 4 members of Congress lost renomination. No senators have. All but 4 House members fell in primaries runoffs, and that is Mike Caponino in the Commonwealth, that's Mass 7, Crawley in New York 14, Robert Pittenger in North Carolina 9, and of course Mark Stanford in South Carolina 1. Out of their 4 districts, the only other incumbent to lose renomination was Jeff, this is in Kansas, to that right-wing nut that's Secretary of State Collier. Anyway, that's pretty much what has happened. You can see fairly dismal renomination race. We won't spend a lot of time on this. New York primary for state-level officials usually occurs on the first Tuesday after the second Monday in November. This would have meant holding it on September 11. I was concerned about conflicts with Rosh Hashanah and the 9/11 commemoration, so they moved it to the 13th. Delaware and Rhode Island also shifted their primaries due to the Jewish holiday. I'm surprised that, let's see who, anyway, Delaware, oh well. Anyway, overall, Crawley remains on the ballot in New York 14 as a working families nominee, but is not actively campaigning. I'm surprised he did that. 2 of the successful incumbents to win primaries, O.K. Ivey in Alabama and Kim Reynolds in Iowa. The Sunbelt, I think we went over that before, so we won't go over it again. So that is from our friends at the Crystal Ball. We'll have more on the polling in real time 2008 from the New York Times in their project tomorrow night. Let me just check on our time here. We have a Gotcha poll here. Now this is was on the 19th. This is out of Baltimore. The Gotcha poll asked Maryland likely voters for governor. 54% of likely voters said they will vote for the candidate, the governor, actually, Hogan. 32% for our candidate, Ben Jealous. That is in the governor's race there in the state of Maryland. Sort of disappointing here on this Hogan situation. They've been dogged by polls there for a very, very long time. And it's part of the problem, again, with the Democratic Party in Maryland. So we're seeing more and more of this occur. And we look at the age groups here. Well, it's the demographics in terms of percentages. I'm assuming in this poll, 12% were 18 to 24, 18% were 25 to 34, 35 to 40, 16%, 18% were 45 to 54, and 55 to 64, 17%. You can kind of see where this is going. 19% was 65 and older. You can see why Ben Jealous was probably not doing as well as others. 35% high school or less, technical school and some college, 26%, college degrees, 21%. From the central region, 21%, Montgomery County, 17%, Prince George County, 15%, Baltimore County, 14%, Baltimore City, 11%, and Western Region, 8%, and Eastern Shore and Southern Region, 6%. Kind of how that poll stacked up here. Party registration here is of July 2018. 55% with Democrats, 26% Republicans, and Independents at 18%. We kind of shot across here. Of all adults, conservatives were 22%. 23% were registered voters, and 22%, I said 23 were registered, and 22% were likely voters. Moderates were 44%, progressives 29%. You can see where this is going here between the moderates and the conservatives. Were 66% of this poll. It's just the way this particular poll was set up was a little bit different here than some in the past. Now, if the election were held today, 54% would vote for Hogan, 32% for Ben Jealous. And this is where they were. And at this poll, you would expect that 26% could change their mind, and 73% was set on the candidate. So not very much move here. Topics: education and jobs, 25%, taxes 10%, transportation 4%, education 13%, racial and social justice 13%. You can kind of see where this is going. 13% what's going on with Trump. Anyway, we kind of get where we are here in terms of in Maryland. Let's do the sports now, and then we'll go to Beto O'Rourke at Prairie View A&M University in the state of Texas. These are scores from Thursday night. The Angels were in at the Athletics in Oakland. Boy, it was a fest, a slugfest. Oakland had it and they didn't. Anyway, 21-3. The line score there, Oakland had 22 hits, no errors, and the Angels 5 hits and 1 error. In New York, the Red Sox and Yankees. Sox 11-6 over the Yankees. The Sox had 13 hits, no errors, and the Yankees 7 hits and 2 errors. And in 12, the Mets and Nationals. In D.C., the Mets, wasn't that one? 5-4, Mets had 10 hits, 1 error, and the Nationals 9 hits and no errors. Not very good pitching there. The Rays and Blue Jays in Toronto. Blue Jays 9-8, and in 11, the White Sox were in Cleveland. Sox 5-4. Cleveland, I believe, has already won their division. Or maybe they haven't won their division. Anyway, Boston won their division tonight. The Royals and Tigers in the Motor City. Tigers 11-8. The Reds and Marlins in Florida. It was Reds 4-2. Two teams that are not going anywhere. And the Phillies were in Atlanta. Atlanta 8-3. I believe, and we'll just go to the standings if we can get to them very quickly here. I think we have very few games going. Here we go. Boston won their division, the Eastern Division, in the American League. The Yankees are 10.5 games back in the Central. Cleveland won the division in the Central of the American League. And Houston, I'm surprised they hadn't tied this up. Anyway, in the Western Division, up comes Oakland at 3.5 games back. In the East, Atlanta is on top, and then the Phillies are 6.5 games back. In the Central, the Cubbies are on top, but yet the Brewers are 2.5 games back, and the Cardinals are 5.5 games back. In the National League West, the Dodgers are on top, and the Colorado Rockies are 2.5 games back. The Arizona Diamondbacks, who tried to upgrade, are 6 games back, and it'll be interesting from here out. This will do it for Friday Jobber on the 21st of September, 2018. We'll see you on the week that was on a Saturday morning, as we normally do. And we'll go now to Beto O'Rourke, or maybe we'll save Beto O'Rourke. I think we'll just save him and get to Beto on the week that was at Prairie View A&M University. And we'll be here with our financial report from the macroeconomics world called Numbers Man. It's that part of the Boston Red Network. And we'll have special programming unless something happens. It'll be Clarence Thomas 2.0. And, of course, we'll have the Monday morning quarterback here. And hopefully we'll get an open source report out. That's our technical report. It's been sitting, as they say, on the bench for a while there. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you on a Saturday morning.